Tonight, on Legislative Review. A look at the week ahead. Plus, imposing tighter penalties for evading police. And managing the state's gray wolf population. All that coming up on Legislative Review. Welcome to Legislative Review, your source for daily highlights in the state legislature. I'm Angela Nolasco.
So ordered.
The week of February 17 through 21 at the state legislature is a big week.
Good afternoon. It is 1:30.
It features the first major cutoff of the 2025 session. Ever since the legislature convened on January 13th, House and Senate policy committees have been meeting several times a week. House committees hearing House bills and Senate committees hearing Senate bills. That all comes to an end on Friday the 21st, the deadline for policy committees to consider bills in the Chamber of Origin, with the exception of budgets and budget-related bills. There will still be plenty of public hearings this week. Monday, hearings on bills concerning penalties for eluding police and resisting arrest, and managing wolves in Washington. Plus, both House and Senate on Monday celebrate President's Day and Children's Day, with kids accompanying their legislative parents to the Capitol. Tuesday, bills providing labor market protections for domestic workers, requiring public input before hiring university presidents, and dueling bills pitting gooey duck versus razor clam for the title of state clam. Wednesday is a day of remembrance in the House and Senate, remembering the forced relocation and internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. And a hearing on bills proposing big changes to the state's fish and wildlife governing bodies.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The bill has passed subject to signatures.
Besides public hearings, policy committees will be holding executive sessions in which they vote on long lists of bills.
Madam Chair, I move.
Just ran over my foot. Get out of the car!
We start Monday's coverage in the Senate, where a Senate committee discussed a bipartisan bill aimed at cracking down on drivers who attempt to flee from police. Senate Bill 5333, heard at a Senate Law and Justice public hearing Monday morning, introduces tougher penalties for those caught eluding law enforcement. Under the proposed legislation, vehicles involved in the act will be impounded immediately and in some cases forfeited entirely. If someone tries to run from the police and gets caught, they could lose their vehicle, especially if they've done it before. The bill adds mandatory community custody with electronic monitoring for 1 year for anyone convicted. For juveniles, the punishment includes 18 months of parole, also with electronic monitoring. If the driver arrested is the registered owner of the vehicle, a hold will be placed on that vehicle for at least 72 hours, preventing immediate redemption. Democratic Senator John Lovick, a former state trooper and Snohomish County Sheriff, is the bill's prime sponsor.
Senate Bill 5333 sends a clear message that eluding a police vehicle is something we take seriously. This legislation will help deter the crime of eluding a police vehicle, reducing instances where an innocent bystander and law enforcement officers are placed in danger.
Supporters say this would reduce dangers posed by reckless driving or high-speed chases by impounding vehicles in question, and that it would deter more people from committing the same crime. And the inclusion of an 18-month parole for juvenile offenders with electronic monitoring will ensure they don't reoffend. Testifying in favor of the bill, James McMahon of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs.
As with illegal street racing, under this bill, a person who a vehicle that previously eluded a law enforcement agency and was impounded, if we catch them doing it again, it is subject to forfeiture. Not mandatory, but it is subject to it. This bill also provides community supervision for those convicted of eluding. And finally, it requires that when a court finds probable cause that a person charged with eluding or resisting arrest and the person is released pre-trial, they be released with electronic monitoring. This believe this bill is measured policy, good for public safety, and we hope it makes our roads safer and reduces the need for vehicular pursuits.
However, critics argue that if the bill is enacted, it will be cumbersome to lawyers and too punitive for juvenile offenders. They also say that the punishment is too severe for a non-violent crime, especially when it could have an outsized impact on someone's livelihood if they co-own a car with family who uses it for work and transportation. David Treeweiler of the Washington Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers.
The bill creates an extraordinarily complicated procedure for the average person to follow. I'm a lawyer, and I would have to read and reread it every time I had a case to make sure I was complying with all the deadlines, the civil rules of procedure, and the service of process requirements, all of which under this bill would have to be complied with within a very short period of time by a layperson. It places what will be an insurmountable financial barrier for most people to contest this seizure, the necessity to hire a lawyer to get the car back. Here we are again saying that if we only make the punishment harsher, the crime will diminish.
The bill claims to include additional safeguards for innocent vehicle owners, but repeat offenders could lose their cars altogether.
Senate Bill 5354, providing flexibility for the Department of Fish and Wildlife to collaborate with local governments to manage gray wolves.
The Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee convened Monday afternoon to hear a bill that aims to manage the population of Washington's gray wolves, which currently remain an endangered species in parts of Washington, a point of contention to ranchers and farmers in rural areas of the state. Senate Bill 5354 seeks to give more control to local counties that meet certain wolf recovery goals, allowing them to co-manage the gray wolf population in partnership with the state and local tribes. It would also require the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to treat gray wolves in these regions as though they are no longer considered endangered under state law if two conditions are met. First, the county must have at least 3 documented breeding pairs. And second, the state must meet its broader objective of 15 breeding pairs for 3 consecutive years. Republican Senator Shelley Short sponsored the bill.
With the numbers of wolves that we have, with the saturation that we have, and with wolves not going in other, directions in other parts of the state, it's incumbent upon us to try different things.
The bill has drawn both support and opposition from many. Proponents say the approach is crucial for ranchers and farmers who face economic stress from wolf predation on their livestock and property. They say local control will lead to quicker management of wolf-related issues, including compensation for livestock loss and conflict deterrence measures. Republic Ranch owner Kathleen McKay.
We're personally surrounded by the wolves. They come and go in waves. With horror every night, they may return and kill again. The losses become unbearable. We're in survival mode, scared for the lives of our livestock and pets. The costs of tools to monitor the property are costly.
On the other side, conservationists are concerned that easing wolf protections could threaten the species' recovery. They also argue that local management decisions might be less consistent with science-based conservation plans compared to a centralized approach by state or federal wildlife agencies. The bill was opposed by wildlife advocacy group Washington Wildlife First.
We think it undermines science-based wolf management in the state. It fragments recovery efforts, and it risks politicizing wildlife protections. We think wolf management must remain science-based and statewide to be effective, and the bill essentially ignores Washington's wolf conservation and management plan, allowing counties to strip protections despite wolves still being extinct from the largest region with most suitable habitat for wolves in the state. I think this bill would weaken the state's ability to manage wolves consistently through the wolf livestock protocol that has been developed by the Wolf Advisory Group, and would lead to fragmented, politically driven management rather than science-based conservation. So it sets a very dangerous precedent for how other endangered species should be managed.
Taking a neutral stance on the bill, Mick Cope of the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
That said, we are concerned about developing a county-by-county management plan for wolves. We anticipate that to begin with, about 8 counties would initially qualify, and other counties would qualify through time. And with the small-scale planning approach, having a cohesive and understandable program that includes population management, wildlife conflict, and compensation is laid out in the bill, I think would be very difficult.
If enacted, the bill would also direct the agency to establish work groups to come up with a regional management plan for the wolves. These would consist of local government officials, ranchers, conservation organizations, and regional nonprofit groups. We'll be keeping a close eye on how this plays out during session. That's it for today's highlights on the state legislature. Stay up to date by watching Legislative Review every night at 8 and 11, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you then.